This is The Countdown, discussing tomorrow's news today as our top guests tackle the issues that matter with a sharp take on every story. And now, here are your hosts, Andrew Weeks and Onyx Duncan.
Oh, well, welcome to another edition of The Countdown. It is the 29th day of December, 2024. We're almost to the end. Onyx Duncan, welcome to the program again, sir.
Welcome to the viewers and the listeners out there in Guyana and in the diaspora. I want to say, if we missed it, Merry Christmas and season greetings. Happy New Year.
Yep. Once again, I think we reminded them in the last program that we said we greet you all the best for the Christmas season. When you come back and ask you what you did during the Christmas season. You know, a lot of persons just relaxed with family and friends, and went for a walk, or maybe went down to town on Christmas Eve. Going all the chaos downtown. Part of the tradition. There's wait till Christmas Day for do all the shopping, but then again, it's Christmas. But you had their fun. But it is 29th of December, right? We headed on to political year, election year in Ghana in next month.
The mother of all elections.
Next year, rather. It's going to be a serious year. So we have a lot to unpack this morning because, Onyx, we don't want to waste no time. We have Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan, our guest for this morning. Khemraj, you don't remember Ramjattan? How you doing, sir? You're smiling like everything out on your other side here.
Yeah, well, here, Andrew, you got to make it all right.
Of course.
In these trial and errors times, that is how I call it. You got to manage, and it is important that we do that. Let me just cut this thing off. Look, I am glad to be on your show this morning, and thanks very much for allowing me to be the guest. I suppose that I too should congratulate Guyanese. It was indeed a Christmas that, in the traditional way, Guyanese always enjoy. Notwithstanding the massive congestion. I remember a couple of days ago trying to go from Delft Street to my office, and it took about half an hour. But that's how it is. It is always difficult, and I gotta decline this. That's the problem with a politician and a lawyer's life all the time.
Always on the bling bling. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
Look, but a Merry Christmas to all that I did not really did it before, and a Happy New Year to all again, because only a couple of days away from that.
Mr. Ramjattan, let me get the ball rolling because we have a lot to unpack this morning. Sir, we have seen the government coming out with a whole lot of goodies, they call it that, pertaining to the governance of this country. We see chaos with the cash grant. We see roads not done properly. We are seeing lights, the electricity sector, the power ship and shipping, the being two and still in shipping. We've seen a whole lot of problems, and the government seems not to get it right. And then Jack Deo on Friday went down a whole line of accusing the PNC and the AP and UAFC and who murder who and who kill who, and he forgetting that he was in government 2 times, and a whole list of deaths on the history. Over 400 persons we can't even account for. A number of persons, and the Saw murder, Kwame Wing murder not been solved. Bacchus, the Henry Boys matter, all under his watch, and he is calling out persons about who's not criminals and who didn't do this and didn't do that. I don't know if you saw the video, but the press conference, but what is your take on the criminal network of the PPP, knowing that they have a bigger bag with a whole lot of weight to carry when it comes to crime and extrajudicial killing in this country. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts remain the thoughts that they always been with me, and that is that the PPP indeed has lots of guilt complex and guilt, ridden complex about them. That is why they would want to shake it off by throwing nastiness at others, like the AFC and the APNU and the PNC and all of that. Look, there is no denial as to the very many murders that happened had to do with a complex network of people whom also I knew. One was George Bacchus, who came to my house and indicated to me who and who were instructing him as to kill who and who in that cemetery.
Yeah.
I had to take it to my party, the same Jack Deal, and he didn't want to listen. I had to use Mr. Moses Nagamutu, and he also carried it to the Central Committee of the party. And he spoke about it, saying that these fellas are giving Mr. Ramjattan some information, and he has brought it, but nobody wants to listen. They're telling him to shut up. That is largely what they were telling me to do. And indeed, I couldn't shut up. You had to talk. And next thing you hear, George Bacchus' brother died, then he died, and things like that. To shut them up. But luckily, he had made the tape. He had done a video recording as to what was being done. And then there was a commission of inquiry. Ian Chang headed that commission of inquiry. And I think David Granger was a member of the commission of inquiry. And then the inquiry got a lot of information. And then I wrote a very telling piece. The shame is greater than the exoneration, because largely the commission did not want to come to the conclusion that there were governmental involvement. But whatever they came to also incriminated, in my opinion, the government of the day, the PPP government, that is. And so I wrote a telling piece called, and you guys, youngsters, you probably didn't know, the shame is greater than the exoneration. And it had to do a lot with the Ministry of Public Security then, called Home Affairs. And I made some statements. They were pretty angry with me, but to hell with it. I mean, you have to state. That is why you have citizenship under the Constitution. You must be dignified enough to state to your government of the day or your party that, look, you're doing nonsense. Please stop this thing. But what the PPP did, control freaks that they are, was that, hey, shut up, Ramjattan. And all of that, you had to be very brave enough and courageous enough to state what you want to state. And that is what I want as a tradition, especially from AFC, the young members and so on. If you feel that Ramjattan is not doing a good job, you state it to him. If you feel as public security minister, I screwed up, you state it to him. That is the value of democracy. But not when you state it, there it is, this dictatorial, autocratic, authoritarian despot saying, hey, get out from the place, you're expelled. And then go and tell everybody that I leak in secrets to the American and to Stabrook News. Now, and that is why I, up to now, I'm angry at what had happened then, but also angrier still that is the tradition and institutionalized norm coming out of the PPP up to today. They haven't learned anything. And it is even worse now. We created also other systems to take away and limit the terms of certain leaders of that party, especially Jack Dale. But he has come back as a VP. And now this is what he does all the time with his program on the television and wheresoever else he has press conferences and so on. He hasn't shortened his term. He has elongated it now. And he's the one that, in my opinion, has done all these errors and all these misgovernance and malfeasance and governance and all of that. But the people around him are a pack of sheep, a flock of sheep. and they just allow him to do what he does. And so it is now seeping into the institutions. I notice it seeps in to the public security sector, the police sector and all of that, whereby you will have more propaganda than the truth, And so it is a telling blow for the Guyanese governance that we continue with this. And it is something that is creating a lot of vexation in people.
Sir, I want to play you a video, and I want to get your thoughts on it after the video is completed. I want to play this video for you right now. Take a look. Take a listen.
Crime Chief and Deputy Commissioner of Police Wendell Blanham has hailed detectives of the Criminal Investigation Department for what he says was an outstanding year in crime fighting and the dismantling of several criminal networks here in Guyana. Speaking today at the annual CID Christmas Luncheon and Award Ceremony, where a number of ranks were awarded, the Crime Chief said though many challenges were faced in the execution of various investigations, the ranks were able to rise above those challenges and to complete their task.
In fulfilling our mandate, our ranks were confronted with some challenges, which were not only limited to our operations, but as was mentioned by Mr. Roberts earlier, but some challenges also encompass sleepless nights and long weekends away from their families and friends, while performing duties during several high-profile investigations. In rising to the occasion to overcome these challenges for the current year, our detectives across the 12 police regions managed to achieve numerous successes by demonstrating a high degree of patience, commitment, dedication, and teamwork.
Deputy Commissioner Blanham boasted that ranks in his department are now motivated, and he believes that has been reflected in this year's crime statistics. He repeated that the country has seen the lowest number of serious crimes recorded this year over a 10-year period. The murder rate, too, he said, was the lowest for the last decade. Mr. Blanham also noted that this year has also seen the highest number of illegal firearm seizures in 10 years, with 178 firearms hauled in by the police.
Our dedicated investigators have also made significant inroads in dismantling criminal groups involving carjackings and those criminal elements whose modus operandi involves targeting customers leaving commercial banks. Our successes can also be attributed to a motivated team of detectives, accurate and timely intelligence, and enhanced capacity building, just to name a few.
The crime chief has urged his ranks to do better in the new year and noted that their efforts are not going to be left unnoticed by the top brass of the police force and the country at large.
Well, Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan, is that a true report to say that the police force have seen the lowest in crime reduction in 10 years?
Well, I would want to say that, look, statistics could be also on stilts. I rather suspect that lots more crime happened, very many of which were not reported, and that indeed there might be some propaganda impact that Mr. Blenheim wanted to sell there. The sentiment, the perception of the ordinary Guyanese is that the crime situation is affecting them in a variety of matters. I rather suspect rapes are happening, that they're not being reported. Lots of other petty larcenies are happening, they're not being reported. And big time crimes are occurring. You can have a genuine nature as to murder rates because that then is in accordance with how much bodies you pick up. So you can have the amount of bodies being found, and you can't really get away from it because the press is after you in relation to what happened, another body found and relying this, that, whatever. But the statistics can be made up. And as public security minister, a lot of them try as best as possible to twist it around to make themselves look good. But I want to say that even if And I have high regards for Blenheim. I must tell you that. But the trouble is that he could be twisted by other, for what you call actors, bad actors, who want the propaganda to reach out there as if indeed the situation is better. In my opinion, I don't feel so. Having heard from so many constituents that they get robbed yesterday, they get knocked down yesterday, and the police in charge demand for dangerous driving or anything whatsoever. Your daughter gets sexually abused and so on. All of these things are crimes, but a lot of them, they're not reported. And probably that is the trouble. People have gone literally feeling a deficit of confidence in that institution for law and order and preservation of peace and all of that, that they don't do it. But I want to say, although I question and I'm skeptical about what he said there, why was he not balanced to give an explanation as to that big 4 tons of cocaine that were found in one of the interior regions next to an airport, that he made mention as to why it is that the police were not called in when the find was supposed to be now exposed to the whole world. Why an agency out of America would not want to call the crime chief or the commissioner of police to send them in there. So it is obvious that even if we take it as he's speaking the truth, and we grant it to him that he's speaking the truth, let us be balanced. There are lots of other things that this government ought to explain about. The crime chief ought to explain about. Explain to me how 4 tons of cocaine could be in the ground next to an airport or a airstrip, and you don't talk about that inside of your final year report. You have to apologize. The apologies can come from the crime chief or the commissioner of police. That is a serious, serious matter, because it means that somebody was shutting their eyes to it or turning away their gaze and to allow what was happening there. And you're dismantling one empire and you're creating another empire? What kind of good policing is that? And so I urge them to be balanced and truthful, and don't be guided by the politics of the situation to make your minister feel good. You must make sure that you do the honest thing, the thing that is going to make you a leader of some integrity for purposes of ensuring that the statistics are known and so on. When he says that he's knocking down an empire there, I really wanted him to give some stats as to how many people he arrested, who and so on were doing these wicked things, and how many people have got convicted for the empire that they have struck down, as they want the people to believe. It's a make-believe. And understand that some of these institutional heads have literally instructions sometimes. And unless you're a person who want the entire truth to come out, you're going to get half-truths. And half-truths could really sink people, because people could feel that I could now go out there not being properly warned, and they get robbed as soon as they come out. So you have to let the people know the truth.
Khemraj, it is really important that you highlight that we have to let the people know the truth, because if we as Guyanese and citizens do not read and just listen to these politicians and listen to these high heads in high places, then we will be misled. Because if you go to World Population Review, you would see that Guyana is the ninth highest, has the ninth highest crime rate worldwide, which is 68.8, and a murder rate about 4 times higher than the United States. So for Blenheim to come out saying something like that, it is very, very disparaging. And Guyanese need to look out and seek the right and true information, because that is misleading. We're in top 10 of the highest crime rate.
Exactly, because look, man, it is nothing wrong that if your crime rates are high, that you have your policemen making sure that it will be lowered the next year. But don't come and gloss it over, paper it over, make it shine, and give the wrong perception, reality then. Well, the two can sometimes go together. The wrong reality or perception to the Guyanese people. That is wrong. When I go to Borbies, that the predial larcenies that are happening there. People plant the garden, bygone gone when the bygone get ripe, get grown. Yes, coconut. I experienced that in my arrangement. My mom has a lot of property there in relation to coconut trees and so on. She can't pick one coconut for the last 4 or 5 years because
Somebody
of the
picking
larceny
the coconut.
that happened. By the time you go there now, people say a big bunch there, whatever, you're gone, bam, it's gone. Who gone with it? Nobody knows because the back dam is a mile and a half inside. And so that is theft. But my mom never reported it. And
No.
all over the place. And this is what is hardening people's vexation against the government. And then the government come and say, well, look now, crime going down. There isn't that feeling that it is. As a matter of fact, it is a rampant feeling there that it is on the up, all the time on the up, and all kinds of crimes happening.
Yeah, and why is that so? Because of several factors, and corruption, which is one of those major factors that we're seeing in this PPPC government. Social changes, economic change, economic development, and we're not heeding to these things, right?
That is so true.
Mr.
Don't
Ramjattan,
believe everything that these institutional heads will come out to you with. You have to be very skeptical, and then you have to do your own research too sometimes. But people generally out there don't do their researches.
Correct.
And it is understandable. And so you sometimes walks good at the fact that, yes, by prime rate, okay. This time, soon as you go out, sometimes you get knocked and they say, what happening here? But it's because it was wrong information given. But as I said, there must be also a balance. It has been publicly known about that 4 tons of cocaine. How come you ain't mentioned nothing about it? Why not?
and not only that too, Mr. Ramjattan, because if you take a look in this report here, Guyana is on a level 3.
And the advisories from the Americans and so, yeah.
Yes, look
the
at that.
Advisories. Right, that's
Yes.
correct. And we're seeing it now.
Right? It's level 3, and they're saying there that be extra vigilant when visiting banks or ATM. Be aware of your surroundings. Avoid walking or driving at night. Do not physically resist any robbery attempt. Do not display a sign of wealth, such as wearing of expensive watches or jewelry. Yeah, you understand? And all of that, and you're telling us you have broken down the criminal stronghold in the country, and that you have.
This travel advisory is a useful instrument to get our status correct.
Correct.
And I believe that, the same Blenheim or Hicken, they can be honest with us. And we can be back, honest with them. It is not that we are dishonest, but it is important that whilst they might be giving the glossy stories, we are getting it from the international people what it is not. And that is exactly the point we should be making here. Be honest and balanced, and give apologies for when things go wrong. I mean, the Jamaican Commissioner of Police have done that on many occasions. The Scotland Yard people, Russell Coombe was telling me that to win confidence, you have to sometimes apologize to the public for not doing the things well. And that is why I say that in relation to that 4 tons thing, so big, not a word from the police.
Mr. Ramjattan, I know you were former Minister of Home Affairs, and you're following the sector in Parliament. You're still shadowing that sector as well. On the record, how would you, from 1 to 10, how would you put on a scale of 1 to 10 the government's, and you can elaborate a little bit more. You mentioned a few things about it before, but elaborate a little bit more on your perception of the state of the Ghana Police Force in dealing with crime and other matters in this country so far.
Look, I would give them a fail right now. It is obvious. When you can have a commissioner that says that he's going to collect $8.5 million US for Brutus's wedding from a businessman. What is that? Where is the standing order that says that he could have done that? And then you promote him to commissioner. I respected Hicken. Hicken had certain skills that other policemen did not have as commissioner. The organizational skill, the thing that he did with young people at Brick Dam when I started out there as public security minister, he could have done that. But Hicken is not a policeman with the intelligence kind of level. Intelligence meaning to how to catch criminals or how to set up units and so on. He has his limitations. But when, just before you promote him, he has been doing a couple of things now that we understand actually happened and for which he confessed in a certain statement, as being stated so often by Conway and Paul Slow. And then, in addition, what they know about him and what they have publicly broadcasted about him, you go on and do that. What about the 4 tons of cocaine? What about any investigations or no investigations happening when a Chinese businessman who is a tenant of Jagdeo says that he does do all kinds of nonsense on instructions of Jagdeo and so on, and no investigation happens? What is that? You know? And so it is important for people to understand that this police force has been fundamentally contaminated by some bad actors. And then we see promotions at this level and so on. I remember all the files which being asked for by Paul Slow when they were police commissioners in that police service commission. And they scrutinized them things thoroughly. I was wondering why all the scrutiny. But then I realized Paul Slow knew that police force like the back of his hands. Same thing with Conway. And then I start realizing a lot too has to be done in relation to how promotions will happen and so on. And then when they started promoting some of the better elements within the police force, we see all now being retracted and revoked to the extent where the bad ones are going up and the good ones are being left. Now, what that will create in a police force is massive disenchantment. The progressives therein will not be doing any work to any great extent or with any passion and zeal. They're going to walk back and say, well, let them do the work, them get promoted. And those who got promoted, what they do? They then go and give $8.5 million and collect it from a businessman to give to the wedding. What crap is that? You understand me? And then what do we have? One of the senior policemen, almost one who may have been appointed as commissioner, if this one wasn't, who has gotten 252 charges and still counting. And now they want to revoke his bail and all of that. He was there. Look, I am not saying that in police forces, you might not have corruption from policemen. Being human will mean that, yes, indeed, at any corner lurks some wicked, evil actor. It happens because we are a human society. But immediately we ought to deal condignly with them. And you have to set the situation right, and you have to let the public know the truth too. I mean, I don't know what will happen to that case, with the Brutus case and this, but whatever happens, it would mean that our police force has been contaminated and contaminated at the head. And when the fish starts rot at the head, the entire body of that fish will soon rot. And unless there are immediate reforms, and I had started a process of reforms, especially the Citizen Strengthening Program from the Americans, the USAID, I think it was, the IDB, and then we had a massive program, the British Security Sector Reform. And almost all the consultancies and recommendations there done by Mr. Coombe and another set of experts whom he employed. He was a big fella in the Metropolitan Police Force of London. He came and he did a whole set of organizational recommending organizational changes and all of that. All have gone to naught now. Literally, all have gone to naught. And it was prior to our taking administration too that the government of the day did not want the British security sector reform because they feel that they will be scrutinized by the British security personnel that might come down and the recommendations and so on that he will adopt. But if government wants to be excluded from scrutiny, then ask for the PPP because that is what you're going to get. We wanted everybody to be scrutinized because we understand that the corruption and the criminalities can occur from even the top levels, ministers. Yeah. All of them could be involved. And so allow a system and an institutional arrangement whereby if it is government people, president, this, that, whatever, they can very much be charged too. And you have all kinds of things happening now. And the recommendations over, I think, about 4 million pounds gone to the dogs and $5 million US from the citizen security, all the recommendations and so on. We had said that we will continue these reforms once we get the oil money. In our period of time, we did not have so much money. So we take a 5 million and a 4 million euros or whatever it was, and we said about 10 million US dollars and start reforming or recommending reforms inside of that police force. But it has gone to waste now. All the recommendations are shelved, and we got new recommendations now being made up. You know, collect money for people wedding, and you're going to start collect for the birthday. Then you're going to start collect for the wife, the picnic 9-day, and all kind of thing. What stupidity is that? I mean, senior people, even in government, got a right to be stupid because, as I'm reading some literature now, the stupidity levels of certain politicians abound in very many advanced democracies. But what we do have is a right whereby the people can say, well, look, you got a right to behave stupid, but we got a right to pull you down too. And the institutional arrangements of making that happen is the police who are stupid ought to be knocked off by the president of the day. But no, continue, promote him. And the promotion of these quality individuals is going to be seriously affect that police force.
Should the government change in 2025 and you're reappointed Minister of Home Affairs again, what changes would you like to see done to the police force to put it back in line?
Yeah, well, look, most of those changes have to do with institutional reforms of the police force in relation to recruitment, in relation to promotions, and the institutions or the heads of these units that are going to do these things have more or less the instructions from these recommendations were made by Russell Coombe from the Metropolitan Police Force of London. There are about 8 or 9 booklets as to what and what must be done, including having quality people in the cadet arrangements of the police force. In relation to salaries and labor conditions and so on, you got to do up back your police stations. You got to make sure that your policemen are paid better. And indeed, as a result of the oil monies that we had made a promise to them that as soon as those oil monies start coming in, which never came in during our term, but came in all exclusively under the PPP's term now. And they have done nothing major in relation to that. We also have to ensure that more training at the upper levels so that you can have a core of officers who can better appreciate and seeing the best practices of London and other countries where crime has been lessened and so on. Bringing back that exchange of ideas straight back to Guyana to implement here. And I had started a kind of a what is called a merged discipline services core group to read all the recommendations that Russell Coombe and his team had done, and including the citizen security report as to what and what you will do in relation to young people in especially vulnerable areas, because where the criminals come from are largely dependent on their socioeconomic circumstances. Some, of course, are greedy, wealthy people that come from good society, but they're greedy. So you know about that too. But where are largely the petty thieves, thieves, and so on coming from? You go and you localize that area and you try as best as possible to woo them away from drugs, away from petty thefts, and so on, by creating what is called young entrepreneurial programs. Let them be mechanics or refrigerator repairsmen, and so on. And you give them, as I was doing under the Citizen Security Program, $90 per month to get the transportation costs to go to a repair shop or a mechanic shop that is closest to them, and pleading with those mechanics, let this boy be working along with you, and so on. And it worked, you know, it worked. A lot of fellas got the $90, and it happened to make them better, because they start living under better conditions at that mechanic workshop. They got other people, and it was a wonderful program. We had some very good things happening in Berbice and so on, and New Amsterdam areas, and we had reports from the people that I put to report on it. And that is what you have to do. You have to also have to make sure that you clamp down on all of these trafficking in humans, all them Venezuelan, Brazilian, and Ecuadorian girls and so on, and you smash that ring that happens at these places, whereby in late night hours and the trafficking, and then it got cocaine and marijuana circulating there, and so you got to do that. And again, a lot of people cuss me and talk bad things about me about the curfew. Right now, all these things are supposed to close off at 12 o'clock midnight. But you got some people say, no, Ramjattan, wrong. We must allow people to go and sport till 4 o'clock in the morning. I put a 2 o'clock curfew. And when you check the analysis that we did, almost all the states of America close up their shops at 12 o'clock midnight. No, but we have a right to drink and behave, you know, and what it did is that it halted by almost 50% domestic violence. Because when the man gone and they're whoring about all over the place, and the wife come back to the wife say, "Why you coming so late for?" Bam! Slap the wife, did this to the wife. Domestic violence gone up. He done all the money that the previous night behind. And that was the actual facts we were finding out. But no, Ramjattan's stupid. That curfew, we should never done that curfew. But we got a law that says that you must close up the place, with the exception only of hotels, bars, where the people in the hotel can go on a little late. But all other places, 12 o'clock is where the license says. Now, Ramjattan,
and you give them 2.
Yeah, and they want it to 4. They want it right now. They don't want it at all. All of that is crazy. And that is why I said that you rate the stupidity of some of the leaders. And it was the PPP set of leaders. Ramjattan wrong. Well, you got them there now. The suicide rate in Guyana is the highest in the world. The domestic violence rate is about the 7th highest in the world. Why? It is because of all these stupid policies that the PPP had for 23 years. And now when you try to better it in that 5-year period, they break it back down and they dismantled everything, and you got it now. This is what it is.
Sir, on another matter, the appointment of the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary, in today's paper, Stabrook paper, I see Stabrook asked the Attorney General, Alan Lanlal, and I'm quoting here, when asked by the Sunday Stabrook why President Ali has not acted on the opposition's proposal to confirm these appointments, and now responded, quote, "That's a presidential decision and the president will make that decision at the appropriate time. You can ask the president." Is that good advice, sound advice from an attorney general who's supposed to advising the president on matters of law? Your thoughts on it?
It's an escape route for the Attorney General. He loves to be arrogant that he has the solutions to every problem. Now, we don't have a solution to this one, obviously, because other people who are instructing him have literally instructed him to say exactly what he said there. Go ask the president. Now, we know that Anil is far more sensible and clever than that. But obviously, the arrogance in him is showing out. And that is what the man is. He loves to talk and explain things and do all kind of things. This one he can't explain because they got the agreement of the opposition leader now. Norton said, well, proceed. I have no objections to the two persons, Roxanne George and Yonette Cummings, being the Chief Justice and Chancellor respectively. And under the Constitution, which we changed in 2002, that 1999 to 2002 period, the robust constitutional period we had in this country, we changed it to agreement now. Then it used to be meaningful consultation. The president called up the opposition leader. Here, I'm calling it to tell you X and Y and Z, I'm going to appoint. And it done there. That was consultation. Well, we worked hard to say, no, we must have an agreement between the two. And the agreement, though we know that it could cause challenges, because if one don't agree, the other one disagree, and so on, you can have the problems there. But now, the two incumbents are there, and the opposition leader agreed. Please, notwithstanding that Roxanne George might have ruled unfavorably to a lot of what the opposition leaders and so on have wanted to argue, the opposition was with large-heartedness saying, please proceed. Not only that, you get the CCJ head saying that these two persons are exceptionally good quality persons to appoint and don't keep the thing hanging. Anil Nandalal himself said that, yes, he's going to make sure that it happens. And it is not happening. If in a very major matter like this, the Attorney General can't deal with the president of the day, then he should resign, because this is a major, major problem. If you as Attorney General is saying that the CCJ has recommended these two women for the position, the opposition has found agreement in them, and you are not telling me, Mr. President, that we should appoint after, I don't know, it was 8 years, 9 years, since 2017, I think they were there. Why is it? Then he should offer because he is in no position to advise the president who ought to accept his recommendation. Well, then he should resign and say that I can't operate under these circumstances. And so it is, we are wallowing in depravity, in stupidity, ridiculous to continue the position now that you have a grand opportunity to seal the deal by the appointment substantively of these two persons. And that is why I think that the Alliance for Change came out with a statement. It's only yesterday or today, this morning. We also come out with a statement in relation to that it should be done. The opportunity is here.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for that answer. If you just join us, you're still looking at the countdown. We have our guest, the Honorable Khemraj Ramjattan, with us. So you want to move on to another topic. We almost running out of time. That is of very much concern to you, not only you, but to many Guyanese, and that is this land acquisition bill that was passed in the parliament. Sir, it seems to a lot of Guyanese that this bill is a trickery. Some folks feel that this, especially the Amerindians, we had Ms. George on our program last week, and she was telling us that the Amerindian people, they're very suspicious of the bill because it can come after their lands. What are your thoughts so far? I mean, you've spoken the bill in Parliament, but since the bill has been passed, not sent by the President as yet, since the bill has been passed, what are some of the matters you've been hearing on the ground, the concerns that you're hearing on the ground pertaining to this bill?
Look, it is a diabolical bill. And it is, again, a piece of scheming, trickery, you could call it, an artifice to get the land taken away before compensation that is adequate and prompt is paid. And it is by virtue of a piece of deviousness, in my view, of the Attorney General. And that is what I called it out. Why I called it out in the Parliament, in my speech to the members there, and to plead with the President not to assent to this unconstitutional piece of legislation. You see, legislation in Guyana, if they are restrictive of the rights that were granted to you by the Constitution, or restrictive of the Constitution and so on, or limits the rights therein, it should be held unconstitutional. Our Constitution, Andrew, states that there can be compulsory acquisition of land, meaning that you can take the title and also possession of the land. But you can only do so when you are promptly and adequately paid compensation.
Promptly and adequately. That's the word.
Promptly
Yes.
and adequately. And that is in our Constitution as it is right now. Our Constitution will lay out in large frameworks, in large frames, as it were, these principled rights. What you get then is additionally laws that are passed in Parliament called statutes that then state how these rights should be respected. And it's called the Compulsory Acquisition Act. So although the Constitution gives you a right to property, but also the state the right to take away the property, but give you prompt and adequate compensation before, you got to get that before. Mr. Anil Nandalal seeks now to use the statute to say that, look, I can pay you 80% of what I think is the value of the land. And I can go immediately and take it over once I do what is called the acquisition by that order that they normally do it by. Okay? So, under the existing regime, if I don't feel, and I could go to court if I don't feel that the compensation is adequate, you can't go and set foot on my land. You can't take it away. The court will have to decide what is adequate compensation. But Anil now has come up with this thing, and a lot of his cabinet members seem not to understand it, because after I made my speech, a lot of them come and say, but hold on a minute, this thing looks bad. I said, yes, where were you? They indicated, and I tell you honestly, that the Attorney General said that it is okay. But when you now got a law that is passed that says we're going to go on the land immediately, and we can only pay you 80% of what we feel you should be paid, that is unconstitutional. If you want to make that constitutional, you amend the Constitution to say that we can compulsory take your land, adequate and whatever prompt payment means, 80% to be paid up front, and you change the Constitution, not do by virtue of a law, because the law now is taking away the rights that are largely printed in the constitutional provision. And so it is in that context I say that you can't pass a law that is inconsistent with the Constitution. Then the supremacy clause of the Constitution comes in. Any law that is inconsistent and limits the constitutional provision, that law is unconstitutional. And to the extent then that this law is now taking away possession long before you are even paid a cent, you are being unconstitutional, because I haven't even gotten a cent compensation. And the courts have ruled on a previous amendment. I think it was brought by Roysdale Ford Senior Counsel. I think it is Miss the High Court Judge Granham, and then it went to the full court, and the full court upheld the decision that you got to be paid compensation before they can compulsory acquire, take possession of. Now, Anil, via a little piece of sentence he put in inside of the Compulsory Acquisition Act, not the Constitution, he says, there shall be prompt and adequate compensation paid, notwithstanding or without prejudice to the state having the right to possession of the land, forthwith possession of the land.
Wow.
That is scampishness. That is scampishness coming from an attorney general. You can't do that. If you want to do that, amend the Constitution. Wait until, as he always say about residency requirement and that kind of thing, wait on the constitutional requirement time. Then we're going to do that as constitution. But he wants to put in a law that takes away compensation being paid full before he could get possession of the property. I believe that the president, if he's an honorable man, should veto that piece of legislation. Don't assent to it. And he'll work out a constitutional amendment if that is what you want. And let us see if you're going to get it 65 or the 2/3 majority inside of parliament to support that nonsense.
Khemraj, are there any legal recourses available if a property owner decides that, or disagree with the government's acquisition decision or the valuation of that property?
Oh, yes, of course. But what he was trying to do here with this amendment is to say that it is the law. So we can go to court now. We can go to court now, and we are trying to get a client whose land is about to be taken away so that we can do it. All right? We could also do it without having that by asking for a constitutional order. The locus standi rights under constitutional order might be wide enough now that even if you ain't got an actual client whose land is being taken away, you can go for constitutional remedies with a general locus standi. The trouble is, it has always been the case that you could go to court, just like the previous clients that went to the Judge Granham. I can't really recall who's the judge name, but whatever it is, the full court, inclusive of Roxanne George and I think Fidela Corbin, have also ruled on this matter. So what he does now is to say that the law is changed, and though that you go to court, he will tell the court that we in Parliament passed a law that only 80% of the money he must get, and we could get possession right away. So they're going to go up on the man's land, asphalt it as the road they want to make or whatever they want to make. And they say, well, we don't start putting up the asphalted road on the man's land, madam. We took away possession from him and so on. Because under the law that I passed in December month, this is what it is. And so he gets away with it. And the man, the court will say, well, it's very difficult to now go on, break up the road and undo that which is to be done, and so on. And its court could say, well, you better take the compensation of 80, and we're going to work out the other 20% later on. But that is wholly wrong. Access to the courts, onyx, is always there. But sometimes the court, because of the fact that the deal is done, it says that, we can't break up the road or we can't break up this thing and that. What they're trying to do away with, also, in my opinion, what they're trying to do away with is feasibility studies.
Yes.
Before you try to make a road, you have to look out for the feasibility. How is this thing feasible? How much property we going to have to pay compensation for if we pass through this? No. Right now, if we take it away from them and they can't say nothing, and we will pay them whatever compensation. And feasibility studies is also a good thing, because you can have a government that is racially oriented, as I believe that this one is, who are going to take away poor people and especially black people lands, but they never want to pass a road through some rich man property or of a certain ethnicity. And even so, when they do it, they're going to pay him $100 million as against $1 million for a poor black soul.
Yeah.
And so the thing got a lot of implications. Same thing for Amerindians. So look at them fellas. We're going to pay them $100,000. And then you don't get the adequate compensation. Because governments say that the land is only worth $200,000. We're going to pay 180 or 160, and that's the end of the matter. We're going to walk out back, even if the judge say it's 500,000 instead of 200,000, and we're going to give the people. That is not how it is supposed to work. Otherwise, little by little, you can creepingly, by a dictatorship, take away everybody's land.
Yeah.
And that is why fundamental human rights are such a big package under the Constitution, and why the Constitution is so important to ensure people's rights are not taken away, willy-nilly.
Before you go on, Andrew, I know we're running out of time, but I have two more questions in that regard, in regards to compulsory acquisition and trends in registry requirements. In your opinion, Khemraj, how, from your perspective, what are some best practices that should be followed to ensure that compulsory acquisition process are transparent and equitable?
Well, it is largely allowing the Constitution to live the experience it was living before. That is, you got to go to court and work out whatever it is. Not go and take possession as the Attorney General wants right now. So if you are offered, let's say, 5 million for the plot of land, and you feel that because of the new road that is built there, I should get about $7 or $8 million, that is $3 million more, you got to work it out. It's consensus that has to be built because it is my land. It has a sentimental value to me. And if you don't want to pay me $8 million, well, then I will carry it to court. Once I carry it to court, you haven't as yet paid me my compensation. The land remains mine. Notwithstanding, you do a vesting order. And so you'll work it out at that appropriate level. And then you'll have an independent person in the court who can say a valuation after she probably or he probably would have ordered a private valuator and a government valuator to value it. And then she could come into the medium section and say, well, I'll split the difference in half, whatever. And that is it. And you get a court ordered kind of arrangement. But that is before the government can take your land away. Because when the government take your land away, the government could go to court and say, well, we already take it, we build the road, as I said. And the court might say, well, all right, it don't happen. Let me stick to the $3 million, $4 million that you're paying. And the matter done. And you too, because you're poor, you don't have big lawyers to argue these matters and so on. All right, man, I'm in a care nothing. And then the state take charge of your life without that accessibility to court and so on. And then you say, all right, man, the PPP government, man, and they give the people whatever they want. That also is a structural problem as to the impoverization of people with lands who are poor and so on. Because when you get now a big man land, it pass through a wealthy fella, he can go to court, got you in court for a while, and he can get the best price, big time money. And what that does is that it enriches rich people and it impoverizes small people. And that is the structural inequity in our society that is seeing the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we know who are poor people in the country is Amerindians and Africans. And that is what is creating this ethnic polarization too, unwittingly or wittingly. In this case, I feel it is wittingly.
Yeah, Khemraj, one more final question. This compulsory acquisition is not only happening in Guyana, but it's happening in the Caribbean also. Like in Antigua, the Sandals International Resort has been, the government would have stopped them from paying taxes until probably 2044, right? But because of all of that is happening, they have planned to close doors. And the government said, if you close your doors, we're going to come in and take your land. Compulsory acquisition. Is that something that this law also provides for businesses that does not pay tax, or for homes and private properties, people who don't pay tax? Can they also do that?
The government of every country in the Commonwealth, constitutional Commonwealth countries of the Caribbean, if that is Antigua, they could compulsory acquire. But they must pay what is called in law adequate and prompt compensation. They can argue the case, that is the hoteliers, they will carry it to the Antigua courts.
Yeah.
The Antigua courts will say, well, wait, all right, well, we will have to work out. If you stop your hotel business and the government wants it, there's socioeconomic implications now, because so many people will be turned out, they become unemployed and all kinds of things. But Mr. Government, you got to pay the hotel people adequate compensation. Now, what is adequate compensation? I, as a judge, can call up experts, because me, know expert on what the compensation for hotel is. If it's a big building, 5-story, 20 bedroom, 40 bedroom, 120 bedroom, whatever. And then they got the authority under their High Court Acts, just like in Guyana, to call in an expert, whether it's a local or a regional expert or an international expert. And then they will put a value to it, and the government of Antigua will have to pay. Now, the government of Antigua can make the argument, but you know what? They had said that this thing will be run by them for all these years for a tax-free. And now
Free, exactly.
we will want a deduction of that compensation that we got to pay them for the taxes that they made by not paying, right? Or the profits and whatever it is. And so they could say we were denied their taxation, and that comes up $100 million over the years that they run it. And so we want a deduction of that because they had promised that they. And so there are lots of other arguments that coming to that. This is not the case here, but in principle, the Antiguan government has to pay compensation with all the necessary considerations of non-taxation and all of that in the equation. In the equation. And ultimately, the court will say, well, you got to pay $40 million, Mr. Government, to the hoteliers. And you can take it and go along your way.
Finally, sir, GCOM is still running ahead with its election registration, and you're hearing Jack Dio saying one thing about biometrics, and then he's not in favor of biometrics, and then you're seeing the GCOM chair is saying that she will resign when she feels like resigning. So far, sir, do you still have faith in GCOM to hold the 2025 elections transparently under the current chair?
Andrew, I have no other option but to say that institutions got to be run. I hope that they could be run honestly and fairly. My confidence has gone down a little since all of these statements have been made, but still, we have to run with what we got. We can do far better. But I could understand the challenges Ms. Claudette Singh is having in there, and also the challenges of the pressures coming to her from all quarters. I too feel that there should be some changes at that level. But what I see that is happening is a restriction of a lot of our democracy laws happening, restrictions and limitations. And it brings me to this case that Carol Joseph has brought, which I want to say a couple words about. It is interesting that indeed there was a ruling before by the Chief Justice that has to do with the residency requirement in relation to before the right to vote. The right to vote, we understand as a constitutional question, is that you got to be 18 years, you got to be registered, and you got to be a citizen of Guyana. But under our laws that make the right to vote a good thing, a credible thing, right, is that you have to have, or the democracy law, as I largely call it, is that you have to have a proper voters list. And right now, we do not have a proper voters list. Now, the argument is being made that, look, we don't have in the Constitution explicitly stated a residency requirement. But gosh, I am saying, like, where we do have it, we have it in the local government laws, we have it in the regional legislation and so on. We have it it's implicit in everything that we do. Because if you got to go and vote, you got to go to a ballot, a polling station area. I, Khemraj Ramjattan, live in 10 Delft Street, Campbellville. I got to go and vote to the nearest polling station. It is the Ramakrishna School that is just 2 streets away from me. At previous times, it used to be at another school across Sheriff Street, right? So you have to have a residency. Now, when they change up this thing in a couple of years ago, they do away with the residency requirement. They said that you only got to go and check out the address. But when they come now, as they did come, they say, is this lot 10 Delft Street, Campbellville? Yes, it's lot 10 Delft Street, Campbellville. You have to go on now to make sure that it is Khemraj Ramjattan and Sita Ramjattan living there.
That's right. Yeah.
They don't do that now. They just come and say, well, yes, we verify that there is an address called Lot 10 Del Street, Campbellville. And you know that Jagabat Anil Nandalal gone and tell people that that is all that is required basically in the law that he now make. And it's indeed true. But that is against the Constitution, which the various articles indicate, as is argued by Carol Joseph, that verification obviously mean too that is Khemraj Ramjattan that is living at Lot 10 Del Street.
Mm.
You understand? That connection, that nexus must be there. Yeah. And so the law must be interpreted. Because if you only interpret the law, then you're going to have a lot of places where we didn't check that it is Khemraj Ramjattan living at 10 Del Street. It is Ashni Singh living at 10 Del Street. Or Bharat Jagdeo living at 10 Del Street. Well, he used to live at 8 Del Street. Going up the road, he used to live next to me here. But you must do that. Otherwise, you can have impersonations and you can have this thing and a whole set of other things on the election day itself because it's wrong information. And then you can have a polling station area made up of a lot of names that really do not live there if you don't make that nexus.
Like the cash grant only dead people.
All right, all kinds of things. Yeah, exactly. So we are saying that although it may not be in the Constitution that a residency requirement is explicitly stated, in the networks that create a democratic state, there are lots of others, 1001 laws that state that this is what will be entrenching democracy, the right to a proper voters list. And what is a proper voters list? That the person living at 10 Del Street is Khemraj Ramjattan and no other in accordance with the National Registration Register. That is all it is. Because you know what? And I'll bring an argument to you. We got a voting statute that says on the day of voting is from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Assuming Anil Nandalal said to us in Parliament now, like we talk about the Compulsory Acquisition Act, and he said, look, I got a majority in this Parliament, and I will say that the voting times now will be 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What is that doing to voting rights and democracy in Guyana? But 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock is not in the Constitution. You can get Roxanne George, Honorable Attorney General, Chief Justice, saying that that does not affect the constitutional right in relation to democracy and the right to vote. Assuming we said that we don't want scrutineers because we had passed a scrutineer law in 2009 or sometime like that. We mustn't have scrutineers. Oh, well, that is not unconstitutional. The government of the day can make that law. Because it's in the Constitution. All in the Constitution is 18-year-old, you register, and you're a citizen, and then you could vote. But under the networking that makes the backbone of your electoral democracy what it is, are other 1,000 laws, which now, if restricted, will mean that you're diminishing the value of that right that the Constitution provides.
That's right.
And in that context, it is unconstitutional. So I want y'all young people to understand how devious this PPP government is. It can, by laws, now restrict the expansive value of the electoral democracy in Guyana by taking away now, as he has done, a residency requirement from that larger foundation of the constitutional principle. And when you do that, boss, you're going to make a lot of people vex. Because you go to court and argue just legalistically and not the broader constitutional arrangement. You argue, but madam, we don't have any law that says that we can't restrict the hours of voting or restrict the scrutineers that must come from the various opposition. He could say that, no, you pass a law that only the PPP must have scrutineers. And so the constitutionalism of an Anil Nandlal, is vastly different from the constitutionalism that ought to be there. And it is in that context that I made a speech also at that time that, look, it's voting rights. I didn't want to take away the electoral democracy. And although the voters list for local government elections come from that NRR list, National Registration List, it's the same thing that it comes from the general and regional elections list. It comes from the NRR. So if you have an NRR that is contaminated because it don't have that at lot 10, or they never checked it out that at lot 10 Khemraj Ramjattan is living, and or that it is a derelict house that they think got nobody inside, as what Carol Joseph is saying, then the verification process is contaminated too.
Yeah.
And the contamination, the fruit of a poison tree will be a poison fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And to that extent, then the argument must be seen that you're limiting, you're restricting our rights when you're probably not directly you're not directly affecting the Constitution, but you're consequentially affecting the Constitution by these rights being taken away. And it's in that context I want the people to understand what Carl Joseph has brought here.
All right. That's it, Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan. Thank you very much. I think we have gotten enough to take us into the new week and the new year. If we don't see you by now on Tuesday, we want to wish you a happy new year in 2025 and hard work as elections in 2025.
Thanks very much, Onyx and Andrew. It was a pleasure being on air, and please, I would like to be back to even further deal with these questions.
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
You can understand.
Most definitely.
Thank you very much.
2025. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day.
Happy New Year. See you in CETA.
Well, oh my gosh. Onyx, you got a whole set of news to carry us into the new year and the new week.
Wow.
It has
Andrew?
been a mouthful.
Yeah, it has been 2024 sum up in an hour.
F grade for the police force. F grade for the police force, Mr. Ramjattan, by F grade.
F grade. And I do believe that it is an F grade, because how can you come out and say things like that when the World Population Review is saying that Guyana is the 9th highest crime rate country in the world, and you're saying crime is on the low?
And then you have this. You understand? Level 3.
Yeah, we are level 3.
Are we heading to
We're at the level
4?
We're seeing these videos put up with people getting robbed at gunpoint.
We know people are not really straight to the truth. People know what's going on. Everybody know what's happening on the ground. So, well, they will decide with their ballots come 2025. You have to decide if they want a country that is safe for them and their families and their children, or they want a country that is going to be full with crooks.
And it's very surprising that Jamaica is not on the list, but you have Trinidad on the list. But we're in top 10 and Jamaica is not even on the list.
Wow, imagine that.
And Jamaica was a former high top 10 high crime rate country. But let's look forward for 2025.
And Trinidad too.
Trinidad there, yeah. Trinidad is there currently.
Well, let's see how this
Venezuela is at the top of the list, and we have Venezuelan. Venezuela is at the top of the list, and we have Venezuelans coming in this country that is not documented, and the government is doing nothing about it.
Yes, and they're murdering people.
Yeah.
Having a lot of crime going on in the country, robberies going on in the country by Venezuelans, and they're not effective.
And mostly in vulnerable areas and communities where persons are not being safeguarded and protected by the Guyana Police Force. So,
well, I can tell you, I've seen a lot of Venezuelans in my community. A lot of them in my scheme, coming out every morning.
Yeah, I pass there every day. I pass there and I see when they go home and when they come out for work. So I can tell you, I'm seeing them.
Well, I'm waiting on them on the ballot on election day. They still don't come and vote too. Waiting for them.
You waiting on
So,
them. All right.
waiting on them.
Um,
I know
as
them
you
living it. Know them born here.
as we close as we close off 2024, I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and I hope that 2025 brings joy, happiness, prosperity, and hope that you guys have a blessed 2025 as we head
Yeah.
into the mother of all elections. It's gonna be very, very sticky. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be nothing like 2020. It's gonna be very, very sticky. So a blessed 2024, and I hope that you ring in 2025.
2025.
Yes,
Yeah, 2025. You said 2024 just now. You're saying 2025.
2025. Sorry, I'm not ready for 2025 as yet. That is
And to you and your family as well, a happy new year to you. And prepare for a long haul in 2025 because this election is going to be, like you said, the mother of all
mother of all
elections.
elections.
Because Jack Dio feels that he can control GCOM and he can tell GCOM, oh, this is I'm going to bully away in GCOM. Hey, the minute you declare parliament shut down, you
Yeah.
have no stake and no say in what's going on with GCOM. GCOM got to do the work according to the constitution and transparently. It's not like Russians say, oh, the national community is watching. The national community is watching. Let me see what's going to happen now. You know? Happy New Year to all of you.
Negotiation of the Exxon contract too.
Yeah, well,
Jack Deal.
well, we're going to see. We're going to see. Well, that's our program for this morning. It's 11:24. We're going to see you back here again in the new year for another edition. Trust me, next year, I'm telling you now, next year, Kongdong is going to be hot. It's going to be steamy hot. Trust me.
Andrew already spoke to our the guest that I want to bring on for the new year, the first guest, and let's see if he responds today so that we can have that program started hot in the new year.
I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that at all. All right, that's it. Have a blessed rest of your day, Onyx. And we're going to see you back here again with me in 2025, God's willing. I'm going to church and pray for those devils who wants to take over our country. All right, that's it. Goodbye. That's our program for today, guys. You're going to see you back in 2025. Goodbye.